Oh, Andy, I never would have said this ever, but it's good to have you ever. I mean, good to have you back, Andy. It's week off. Are you refreshed, rejuvenated?
I am. It's good to be back. Thank you for your insincere welcome back comment there. It's good to be back.
Yeah.
It was a short, it wasn't like a crazy long time away, especially because I was traveling. So, 2 days ended up becoming just travel days. But it was a great break. My wife and I enjoyed some time away, enjoyed some time basking in the glories of the sun. Dave had a fun run-in while I was on vacation and had a great run-in in North Carolina as it was. So it was a great break.
Yeah, funny enough, I mean, Andy stopped over in Charlotte, which is where I reside, and we were able to hang out with them for the night.
Yeah.
It was him and his lovely wife, more so your wife than you, Andy, but
That's fair. That's
yeah,
100%,
yeah.
100% fair. Yeah.
But we had a fail though, Andy. We should have memorialized it. We didn't take a pic or anything. So
Next time we come through the lovely town of Charlotte, which I do have to say, Dave, you warned us, and the Charlotte airport is in fact an absolute madhouse. Even at Sunday morning at 5 a.m. It was a wild, wild place. And then on top of everything, like, it was already chaotic there. And as we're going through the line, there's a worker there who's like telling everybody, "Oh, you're probably not going to make your flight. It's an hour and a half from this point." People were freaking out, including us. It was like 30 minutes. It was like completely standard time. Like everyone was just causing panic, and my travelers were worried for no reason. I was like, what is that? What, we popping some pills this morning. We just went to frustrate some workers, but it was a fun trip. I shared a post. I shared a comment, a note with you. I was in the middle of the Caribbean, and there I am at a bar behind a guy. Looked at each other, didn't acknowledge each other, and then a couple hours later was in the gift shop here in the middle of nowhere, and this guy looks at me and is like, "Hey, do I know you?" Same guy from the bar. And my initial instinct was, "What's this guy trying to sell me?" Right? And so I get an immediate defensive flex, and then he looks at me, he's like, "From Germany," and then we sort of look at each other and clicked, and it was a fellow lieutenant from my time back in Germany back in 1999 or thereabouts, and I hadn't seen him since Germany. He lives in the middle of the Texas right now. Haven't seen him in 25 years, and there we were in the middle of the Caribbean, running into each other. Got a nice photo with our wives, and had a chance to catch up. It's just funny how small the world can be at times, and with the military, I think you have you're part of a network that is literally everywhere, and it's always fun to have those run-ins with fellow veterans and others that are serving, and just appreciate what you've both done. And it was a fun run-in. Not as fun as being in Charlotte with you, of course, Dave, but it was a fun run-in.
well, that's there is that. There is that. Those are cool, Andy. I mean, it's one of those things where sometimes you have that look, you're like, the face
Yeah,
is, and but you can't quite picture it, and then you're like, it's probably nothing, and all that other stuff. But
yeah,
those are fun, and of all places in the world, Andy, I mean, that's kind of a fun place, right?
yeah.
All right, Andy, let's get into our segments. You remember how to
Yep.
do these? I mean, do you remember how to pod, Andy?
I mean, I just follow you, Dave, so it's easy for me.
Okay, all right. So we're gonna go with this here, Andy. We'll start with the NFL. Big win for your Lions and big win for the Cowboys because they didn't play last week.
Yeah, that is a win for the
So it
Cowboys. So, Dave, the Lions were awesome
was a
yesterday. It
good
was
game.
it was it was a great game. I mean, even if you weren't a Lions fan, even if you're a Vikings fan, if you just love football, I mean, here's the undefeated Vikings playing a divisional matchup against the very hungry Lions, maybe without their best player, certainly one of their best players in Aiden Hutchinson being injured. Lions come to town. If they win, they're the division leaders. Vikings go out on top fast and furiously early. Lions come back. It's a close game all the way down to the wire. And then a former UFL kicker playing in Michigan, picked up by the Lions, kicks it through the uprights for the win. I mean, it was a super, super game. Hats off to the Minnesota Vikings. I hate to say this, I like that team. I like that coach.
Yeah.
I like that team. They're playing tough. They're surpassing expectations. But man, it was glorious to see the Lions give them their first loss. But Dave, there was another game yesterday that I maybe liked just as much. Didn't even watch it. But Dave, I loved watching Russ Wilson and the Steelers
Uh,
kick Aaron Rodgers and the Jets' teeth in.
So so one great game for the Lions. I mean, it was, and I did come away with like, oh, maybe the Vikings got a little bit more here. I mean, they went out early, then the
Yeah,
Lions came back and went up, and it looked like they were in complete command. But a play here, play there, and next thing
yeah,
you know, you need a game-winning drive. So kudos to Lions, but I ranted on this last week, Andy, and you probably haven't heard the pods yet. But when
yeah,
you do, you'll hear my thing about the Jets. It's like, where do you go? Like, and this was before the loss. Like, they're 2-4, and they go with Devontae Adams.
yeah,
And guess what, Andy? Nothing changed.
yep.
I mean, they weren't some high explosive offense. Now they've mortgaged more of their future for what? I mean, it's a shit show. Like and look, Russell Wilson was getting booed a lot
Yeah,
early because
yeah.
he looked pretty bad. There were a lot of memes on Twitter. There's a lot of examples on Twitter. But that's an ass whooping, and I mean, the Jets can't blame their field goal kicker this week. So,
Well, we'll see what Jets general manager and coach and starting quarterback Aaron Rodgers has to say about it. I'm sure, and he'll be on Pat McAfee with some excuse. And look, the Jets aren't a good football team. They're not being managed well. They're not being led well. And Rodgers isn't helping himself. Again, it's everybody's fault but mine. And it only goes so far, man. It was great.
yeah,
Congratulations. I rarely cheer for the Steelers, but I was a Steelers fan last night.
I heard somebody mention already on a podcast this morning. I was walking. What if Rogers goes on McAfee and requests a trade? Wouldn't that be great?
No,
Yeah,
Dave, nobody wants him. Nobody wants him.
I know. All right, Andy. The other word of the week was injuries. I think,
Yeah,
Andy. The
yeah,
Niners are in shambles. One, they're already without Christian McCaffrey, who's, I mean, we're on, 8 weeks into the season now. We don't
yeah,
know when he's going to play. And now Brandon Ayuk looks like he's got a torn ACL. Debo Samuel, who can't put together, I love Debo Samuel, but he can't, if he puts together 3 straight weeks of playing games, that's an impressive accomplishment at this point. He's out, he was out with I think, an illness. And it's just Brock Purdy back there, Andy, and that's not a pretty sight for anybody. And look, the Chiefs, their offense is still, you can suspect the Chiefs offense. The one thing you cannot disrespect is their defense. It is amazing.
yeah,
They look great. And so, but you have that, and then you had Jaden Daniels go down, like like early in that game against Carolina, which is a shit show in itself too.
yeah.
It's a lot of craziness going on, Andy.
Yeah, hopefully Jane Daniels is okay. I mean, and David mentioned Deshaun Watson, with
Oh,
what looks like a season-ending injury. I mean, it was I mean, that's part of the story of football, unfortunately, is I mean, injuries are just part of reality. They're part of reality, and this has been a rough one. And for some of these teams, it's been a rough one, and yeah, I mean, Brock Purdy, I spoke on Brock Purdy at length last year. I'm just staying quiet this year because I think the 49ers' troubles without some of their superstars will shake themselves out. But hopefully these injuries for the most part. Looks like Deshaun's out for the season. Hopefully everybody else can bounce back relatively quickly because you hate to see guys go down like that. You don't want to see a team lose because somebody's hurt. That's for sure.
Was that a blessing in disguise, the Deshaun Watson, thing? Look, the Cleveland's bad, but
Yeah,
um,
they
but
suck. I mean, if there's an excuse to rebuild, that injury might save that coach's job.
I mean, he's gone down with the ship there. He keeps going out with Deshaun. I mean, now we'll see Jameis Winston, and he of the, like, I think one year didn't he throw 30 interceptions or something stupid? It was
Yeah,
that
his picks and touchdowns
his pick
match.
six. Yeah.
Yeah, he's got a cannon though. I'll give him that. He's got a cannon, and he did lean up during that one season he was down in New Orleans. He's still got a potential to come in and do a decent job because the Browns again should be good. So
Yeah.
we said before we don't think Deshaun's heart was maybe really in the game. Don't know that, but it didn't seem like that. Maybe a hungry Jameis Winston wants to come out and prove himself, and who knows? Who knows?
Yeah.
The drama
So
of the
we
NFL.
Yeah. And we got a good game tonight, so that'll be a fun Monday night game. But Andy, we also have like really bad football teams. I mean, New England is really bad.
Yeah,
Carolina was down 37-0 without Jaden Daniels. Jaden Daniels had only played like I think one
yeah,
series or something, not even a series. and they were down 37 nothing or whatever. They're gonna probably, I mean, why not at this point go back to Bryce Young and just let him play? But that team is really bad. And the Jaguars, even though they won over in London, they're really bad. It's some bad football out there for sure. So,
Yeah, yeah,
uh,
and the Giants. I mean, the Giants,
yeah.
they're terrible.
How, I mean, how big of an like? Here's what I didn't understand: why are Giants fans booing Saquon Barkley? I mean, did you not see the hard not like? It wasn't like he wanted to leave. The Giants told him to leave, and they would try to match it, and then they basically said, "Good luck to you." I
Yeah,
mean, I don't understand why you're booing Saquon Barkley. And good for him because he fucking torched them yesterday. So,
he did. I
so
mean, yeah, they chose to dump him, and he's showing that hey, if you give me an actual team and line, I can be absolutely lethal. And they didn't do that in New York.
yeah, yeah. So it's going to be interesting there. Andy, I want to turn to another sports topic,
Yeah,
um, because this is something I've ranted about in the past. But over the weekend, it was announced that Tony Bennett, the head coach of the University of Virginia basketball team, who
yeah,
won the national championship in 2019, they famously had been the first time a 16 seed beat a 1 seed. They lost that game, and then the next year they went and won the national championship. He abruptly 3 weeks prior to the start of the basketball season, he just abruptly quit, or resigned or retired or whatever it was. He's no longer the coach of the UVA men's basketball team, and it came out like on yesterday the press conference, and basically he's like, I'm not the right person to lead this new era of college sports effectively. He
yeah,
didn't come out and say those exact words, but basically it's like if your heart is not into it, or if you're not like you need to leave. Now, this is on the heels of Nick Saban, the arguably the best college football coach of all
yeah,
time. He has 7 national championships at Alabama and LSU. One of the best, no doubt, one of the best college football coaches ever. He resigned at the end of last year, and effectively said the same thing. He said it's no longer about kids like, coach, how do I get better, how do I become better, how do I get to the starting spot. It's about, coach, how much are you going to pay me to stay here, how much are you going to pay me to do this, how much are you going to pay me to do that. And look, I want to be very clear, college athletes do need some compensation. They've been for too long. They've been, colleges and universities were making money hand over fist on the name, image, likeness. So I don't disagree with that at all. But I do think when you don't have any regulations around this or any guidelines, it's the Wild West. And
yeah.
what you have today is the Wild West in college sports, where players are seeking compensation versus how do I get better. I mean, there's a thing, Andy, where the NFL draft, they said this year was one of the worst drafts in terms of like rounds 3 through 7, because a lot of players who would have come out, a lot of good players who had upside would come out, stayed in because they would have made more money in college than they were going to make as a 4th round draft pick or a 7th round draft
Yep.
pick.
Yep.
So changing dynamic of college sports, Andy. I know you're not a huge college fan, but I know I shared this with you yesterday. Any thoughts on going through that?
Well, I mean, it's part of the evolution of the game, and there's always changes in sports. But I think one of the things that was great about college sports, like the Olympics, right, in many respects, and sort of um, there's sort of a disheartening part to the NBA Dream Team coming to the Olympics, both the original time around and the guys who are playing recently, because there's something wonderful about our young amateur athletes going and playing the Olympics. In college sports, sort of similarly, there's something like really wonderful about these young women and men who just love their sport. They want to be out there and be their best, and they're playing their best. They're playing for their school, and it's just been part of the change over many years. People are leaving the drafts earlier. People people want to get paid, and for those really talented young athletes, like they have to make that decision of, do I stay in? Do I risk getting injured? Do I go pro and get that payday? And so there's part of that continued evolution, and like you were kind of, I think, saying, like I get it, like I get the financial incentive, I get the idea of wanting to get rewarded for bring a lot of money into those universities and to take care of themselves and their families, and like I get it, but something you do feel is lost when you take away that just pure amateur part of the game, and people just out there playing their best to be their best just to win, right? Because that's just so fun. It's so fun to see that. And sports, everything, people want money, and they want to get paid. And there's nothing wrong with that. But, sports is about more than money, right? In many cases, it's not. It's a business. But at the same time, like, we want to cheer for our favorite teams. We want to cheer for our favorite players. And it is a changing environment. And I can understand the coach's frustration, but I can also understand, the realities of where we are. I mean, it's tough. It's tough.
Yeah, I think it's going to be like, I don't begrudge like the evolution of it or anything, but like the head coach can no longer be the single point of on a football team.
Yeah.
Everything used to go. I mean, I say they may need to start having general managers in
Yeah.
colleges and
Yeah.
to
That's right.
manage rosters, and you may have to have a cap specialist or something, because there is going to be some sort of cap at some
Yeah.
point. There's going to have to be some regulations and guidelines and about this or that. Hopefully, it's not as stupid as you offer somebody a slice of pizza and they can't play football for the year or something like that. But you're going to have to, it is going to be a change in dynamic. And the football coach, or at UVA, the basketball team was the prize. I mean, it wasn't the football team. They're awful. But he had a lot of power and authority. And
Yeah.
now all this is, you have people coming to you now and asking for this or that. It is different. So the
Yeah.
coach can maybe focus on being the coach, and the general manager can focus on keeping players and retaining players and all this other stuff.
And
So
those realities, Dave, like that works for UVA, for Alabama, for a
yeah,
school that maybe would be able to use their huge endowment and bring in competitive players. Like Harvard could just go on a wild spending spree. But where it really becomes a challenge is for those
yeah,
wonderful Cinderella teams that make the NCAA tournament every year. Like, they can't necessarily afford all those same positions like these big schools can, right? I mean, like the idea of a GM and a cap manager, and that, like in one sense, like that makes sense. And a lot of these schools have the resources to pay for those individuals to work there and could do it. And like, maybe that's a part of the evolution. From those
yeah.
smaller schools, like that's a big hit, and they can't get in the same talent in those positions. Just makes it that much harder, and the disparity perhaps that much more. So I mean, college sports has to figure itself out. The colleges have to figure themselves out. I mean, it's definitely a changing time for higher ed at many levels. We'll see where it goes, but I know, for college sports enthusiasts, it's a changing game for sure.
Yeah, you may even have further breakup of like the like Division 1 is going to be like really clear. Like maybe it's the power division, and then like the subdivision or something.
Yeah,
Like, I know we already have somewhat of that, but it could be a lot different. But yeah, good, fair point. I think that's a really excellent point about some of the smaller schools. They just, like George Mason couldn't afford to have all these different things. I
yeah.
mean, so that's our school for anyone who cares.
Go
All
Patriots.
right, Andy, I want to go on a last gasp here. You probably didn't want to come back to any politics talk, Andy, but
True.
we did have I guess over the last couple days, just like some really crazy stuff going on. You had the former president who was in Detroit, your home of your favorite football team,
Yep.
ranting and raving about God knows a lot of different things, as he typically does, but also saying that if like Kamala Harris wins the presidency, she'll make America like Detroit. That's an interesting, you go to a city and you say, and basically saying like Detroit's one of the worst cities in the world.
Yeah.
And some of those positive, those positive lines, all about getting that important Michigan voters. Also talked about imposing 1,000% tariffs on imported automobiles. I get it. You got to play to the auto workers, right? I mean, but we've always talked about tariffs, Andy.
Yep.
So, um, but I think what I want to come back to is again this, and I talked a little bit about it last week. So I just want to hear your thought. Again, we keep talking about this politics of fear. And there was a really good article, I think, in Market Watch. It was opinion piece, so granted, take it for what it is, but just talking about if you believe the Republican side of things, you joke about this a lot, like you couldn't walk across the street without getting raped or
Yeah.
murdered or some sort of criminal act when the reality is, America still does a lot of things really well. And look, we have challenges with education, our education systems, and a lot of different things. That aside, like we are still leading the forefront on a lot of scientific breakthroughs. We are leading on, America is still a great place to do all those things without walking outside and getting killed.
Yeah.
So I just found this to be an interesting line of talk. Again, you continue to hear these politics of fear without any substance behind any of it, and it really does shade cover the fact that America still is pretty awesome. And that was the nature of this article in Market Watch, Andy. So
Yeah, and it's right on. I mean, you mentioned before, like, the Substack that I started, that's exactly the idea of it, right? That America's awesome because it is, right? And you've got this doomsday, argument being made by former President Trump that doesn't align with reality. And I thought that article, I appreciate you sharing it because it echoes, other articles that have come out many times over the years that, I mean, once you cut away the noise, right, and take away COVID, which was hugely disrupting, like we're healthier than ever, we're wealthier than ever, we can communicate better than ever. Technology's connected the world in amazing ways. Science is amazing. Our level of knowledge is amazing. Like for all the fear we have about, Terminator, Ultron, death futures, like evolutions in AI and quantum computing are amazing. And there's a lot of fantastic things happening. And yes, there's real dangers and threats out there politically, the environment in different ways, war in different ways. I mean, there's some issues out there, but like for the average American and for the average citizen of the world, like life has never, ever been better. I mean, the
yeah.
the progress since the founding of this country, the progress under the free market, ushered in by America, culminating back in 1989 when, the Soviet Union fell and communism failed and the world saw, all the success of the West, like that has continued. And even though a lot of, I think, folks look around today and, they want different government and different economics, everything else, but like where we are like life has never been better. And there's definitely problems in this country that we need to address, but not because we're in chaos and this is some kind of American hell, but because we always want to get better. And like we should always be striving to bring more people up, to do better, to let everybody enjoy their lives better, to have more progress in different areas. Like that's all good. But America's amazing. And that article points out the fact that there's like statistical evidence that like life is good and life is good. And people like to sort of focus on the doom and gloom, none more so than the former president. And while I can understand that to a certain extent, you look around, there's war in the Middle East and war in Ukraine and threats and violence and yeah, there's suffering and all these things, but like life is amazing and we should celebrate that. And this country is amazing. And agree with Kamala Harris or not, the idea of celebrating joy and freedom, even if our politics don't necessarily align with some of the rhetoric, but like that idea like resonates with a lot of people because like this is something worth celebrating. This America is awesome.
Yeah, I think it, I mean, it, and I agree, Andy. I definitely.
I was agreeing with you, so I'm glad you agree with yourself.
Yeah. So, Andy, I did vote this weekend. So
Oh, nice.
it was, I took my little one too, my 8-year-old with me.
Did you get
Um,
her to vote too, Dave? Did you find a way to get her to vote? Let them know.
yeah, because there's fraud all over the place. And actually I found the secret ballots, Andy. They were stacked up behind the people who registered me to vote on the thing. Andy, I'll tell you, like I never mind like voter ID laws, right?
Yeah, yeah,
I don't mind voter ID laws at all. I think
yeah.
they're completely appropriate. We should have verifiable identification if you're going to vote in this country. And what I appreciate more than I think the way we fail is by making people come to weird places who can't get there. We should go to the voters. I talked about that last week too. But I showed up, and usually you register while you get your driver's license. Apparently that didn't happen for me. So, but I showed up, and guess what, Andy? They registered me on the spot there to do it, and I was able to. It took me 10 whole minutes, Andy. 10. My daughter was inconvenienced for 10 minutes, but then we went in and I did the voting thing, and I felt really great leaving there. I just it was important. I was glad to show that to my daughter, and glad to have that time to vote in this election. So I
I'm
took
glad you
advantage.
did, Dave. I mean, honestly, it's a great thing to do. I'm glad you got to do it. I have been voting absentee the last few years. I'm going to go vote in person with my oldest son who gets to cast his first presidential vote this year. I'm glad you got to take your young daughter out there to be part of that experience as well. A lot of people, don't want to vote, right? And it's sort of like a protest, like, screw it, they all suck. I'm not going to vote. I personally strongly disagree with that. I mean, I think like voting is such an incredible opportunity to go cast your vote freely, safely, and securely, and be part of the future of this country. Is I think is such an awesome, awesome blessing that we just like so many other things we take for granted. I'm so glad you got to go out there and be a part of that and let your daughter experience that and vote twice as you did because you're a cheater. And so I think
Yeah.
it's great. It really is great. But I hope that everybody who can votes. I mean, it's never been easier, to be honest, unless you're in one of these, places tragically hit by some recent severe weather. But for most Americans, like, there's so many ways to vote. To just like and choose not to do it, it's just to me, it's a failure of citizenship. It shouldn't be required. I'll never, agree with that, but it should certainly be something that we not only choose to do, but celebrate doing, because what a privilege as an American to go out there and choose your own leadership. At the end of the day, Dave, for all the ranting and raving we do about everybody from Kubich to everybody else. Like we vote them into office. We allow the gerrymandering. We allow all this nonsense that we loathe because we're not necessarily doing our part as citizens. But voting is one thing we can all do to try and create the future we want to create for this country. So congratulations to you.
Yeah, it was very well said, Andy. Very well said. So yeah, I think, and again, you just mentioned is there's so many different ways to vote anymore. Like you can do mail-in ballot. My wife is doing a mail-in, so she got all of her information this weekend. You know, it's not just on election day, so you can't
Yeah,
just say, "Oh, I can't break away from the election day." I did it over a weekend
yeah,
in a well, it was an old retail store, so they had everything set up. It was very well run. It took me literally 20 minutes from start to finish, and I felt good about, contributing to this great democracy.
yeah.
So, all right, Andy, anything before we wrap up this week or
Dave,
this,
it's a
I'm sorry,
pleasure.
this week? We're just starting this fucking week.
I
So
know.
that's how long it is.
It's a
So,
blur. It's a blur. But I mean, Dave, it's a pleasure to be back. Here we are towards the end of October already. Hard to believe. So thanks for holding the fort down last week. I've still got some podcasts to catch up on. I'm looking forward to that. And grateful to be back for another great week of Xing.
yeah, no, I certainly appreciate it. So I appreciate having you back. So, all right, Andy and everyone else, we'll catch up with you next time.